Hi, my name's Odella, and my son sent me to a nursing home with a smirk and a line I'll never forget. Let's see how long she lasts. No warning, no goodbye. Just a quiet removal from the life I built, like I was furniture that no longer matched the decor. But the worst part, it wasn't just the abandonment. It was the paper trail I never signed, the house sold without a word, the family group chat where they laughed at me like I was already gone. I kept silent for a while. But what happens when a mother fights back after being erased? What would you do if the people you raised decided you no longer belonged? They told me I'd be more comfortable at Highland Cedar. That was the word Tobin used, comfortable. As if I were a misplaced throw pillow instead of his mother. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of my bed, folding my nightgown like I was packing for a vacation I hadn't agreed to take. In the living room, I could hear them, Tobin and Mylis, talking logistics. Her prescriptions are already transferred. I called the place. They've got her dietary notes. Her voice was always too even, too polite, like sugar poured over cold metal. I sat quietly, my hands moving, my mind elsewhere. When did I become a problem to solve? The chair by the kitchen window used to be mine. Every Sunday morning, I'd sit there, steam from my coffee, rising in lazy curls, while Joreen, my sweet boy, ran into the kitchen barefoot, asking if I'd tell him a story before pancakes. That chair was my place, my anchor. Weeks ago, I noticed it was gone. No one said a word. No one asked me if I missed it. I didn't. I missed what it meant. Tobin walked into my room without knocking. He had that expression he wore when pretending to be busy with grown-up things, even though I changed his diapers and sat through his braces appointments. "Mom, they'll have a garden area. You'll be with people your age. It'll be nice." He didn't look me in the eyes. I nodded. "If it's what you think is best." Mylis hovered in the hallway, arms folded like she was keeping count of my breaths. She didn't speak, not to me, but I caught the glint of something in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Or was it satisfaction? That night, I stared at the ceiling longer than usual. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floors I mopped for 30 years. I held the locket, Tobin's baby picture inside. The clasp was bent from wear. I used to wear it every day until recently. I tucked it into a drawer and closed it without thinking. In the morning, I placed my slippers near the kitchen's edge. The place was already too clean. No flour on the counter, no banana peels in the compost, no toys underfoot. I turned to say goodbye to the fridge, like a fool, and saw one of Joran's old drawings. It used to say, "To Grandma." The grandma had been scribbled out in blue marker. I didn't touch it. The ride to Highland Cedar was silent. Tobin drove like he had somewhere more important to be. Mylis sat in the back seat, tapping her phone. No one asked if I was okay. No one mentioned how small my bag was. When we arrived, a young nurse with bright pink scrubs and a clipboard met us at the door. "You must be Miss Odetta," she said with forced cheer. The tag on my welcome packet said Odella, my name, misspelled. That was the first thing I saw in my new home. The hallways smelled of lemon cleaner and artificial lavender. Everything was too bright. The kind of bright that made you feel like a guest at your own funeral. My room had a twin bed, a small dresser, and a window facing a brick wall. I sat down slowly, placing my purse on the bedside table. No family photos, no chair by the window, just beige walls and a television bolted to the corner like a prison ward. The door clicked shut behind them. No hug, no, "We'll call soon." Just the sound of a car engine fading down the drive. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. Maybe Tobin had messaged. But no, it was a delivery alert. A pair of shoes I'd ordered weeks ago. I didn't even remember ordering them. I whispered to no one at all. I didn't leave my home. They just stopped seeing it as mine. I remember the day Tobin handed me that stack of papers. He stood in the doorway of my kitchen. His kitchen now, I suppose, looking too polished, too rehearsed. "It's just precaution, Mom," he said, placing the folder on the table like he was doing me a favor. Everyone's doing this now. You know, aging parents, power of attorney, healthcare stuff. He smiled, like it was a minor errand he could cross off his list. I didn't read them. I didn't even pretend to. I signed each page without asking questions, partly because I trusted him, mostly because I didn't want him to think I didn't. That was months ago, maybe more. Time stretches differently when no one checks in. Yesterday, a staff member at Highland Cedar, her name was Trish, I think, mentioned, "Oh, it's a shame you had to sell your home. That place sounded lovely." She said it while adjusting my medication tray like she was talking about the weather. I felt the air leave my lungs. "My home?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Your old neighbor brought it up, said it sold fast." I called Joanne, the woman who used to live across the street from me for 20 years. She confirmed it without flinching. "Oh yes, it was sold a few weeks after you moved. Tobin handled everything." I sat on the edge of my bed for a long while, staring at the wallpaper I hated. I never agreed to sell anything. I had a mortgage, yes, but I paid it down myself over 3 decades. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. At least it used to be. A memory came crashing back. Me, standing in front of the door of my own house, key in hand, groceries slipping from my arm. The lock didn't turn. I tried again. And again. When Tobin pulled up, he didn't look surprised. "We changed the locks, Mom," he said. "It's for your safety. Too many break-ins in the area." He hugged me after saying that, then drove me to his house. Back then, I convinced myself he was being protective, looking out for me. Now I see it differently. I asked one of the other women here, Marcia, a former paralegal, for a referral to someone who could help. Her brother was a lawyer, semi-retired. He visited me last Thursday. Kind eyes, quiet demeanor. He brought copies of the documents I signed. I watched his face as he read through them. Finally, he looked up and said, "Legally, your son has full control over your financial and medical decisions, full power of attorney, asset transfer rights, everything." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He added gently, "There's very little you can do to reverse it unless you prove coercion or mental incapacity at the time." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." That night, I sat in the common room while the TV played a rerun of some game show. Around me, families gathered, visiting, laughing, passing around chocolates and photo albums. I looked at my phone. No calls, no text, nothing from Tobin. Joreen used to video call me every Sunday when I lived with them. Now it had been 6 weeks. I started wondering if he even knew where I was. I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was a thing they placed here to make room. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them that. I went back to my room, pulled out a composition notebook I bought at the tiny convenience corner near the lobby. I labeled it Ledger on the cover. I wrote down everything I could remember. Dates, conversations, what was said and by whom. When I signed what. When the locks changed. The day I arrived here. The name of the nurse who greeted me. They think I'm disappearing. They think I'll fade into the beige walls and smell of disinfectant like the other women whose families stopped calling. But they don't know me. I've worked 3 jobs at once. I've lost a child and had to keep going, like the world didn't stop. I've buried my husband and held my son through his worst years. This won't be what breaks me. I turned to the first page in the notebook and wrote in bold letters. They think I'll fade. They're wrong. I'm not done. The days here blur together. Same hallway, same meals, same overly cheerful staff who call me Han, but don't remember my name. I've started counting how many times the maintenance man walks past my door. 7 on Tuesdays, 5 on Fridays. It's not obsession, it's survival. When your world shrinks to a twin bed, beige walls, and a window facing a brick wall, you find patterns to cling to. Even silence starts to hum after a while. Last week, I overheard 2 nurses talking by the vending machine outside the lounge. One of them said, "These old folks, Half of them are waiting for a visit that won't come. The other half don't remember why they're even here." They both laughed. I kept my face calm. Inside, something cracked. This morning, a tech intern, Dylan, I think, came in to fix the Wi-Fi on my tablet. He couldn't have been more than 20, polite in a distracted way, like he had somewhere better to be. As he tapped through my settings, a screen flickered to life. A video clip played. I didn't recognize it at first, just blurry footage from a hallway camera. Then I heard his voice. Tobin, clear as day, leaning against the front desk, laughing. "Let's see how long she lasts," he said. "Bet she'll start forgetting things in a month." There was amusement in his voice, casual cruelty, the kind that doesn't sting like a slap. It seeps in slow, settles in your chest, and stays. Next to him stood Malis. She didn't speak. She just gave a little smirk and looked away. I didn't blink. I didn't ask Dylan to stop it. I stared at the screen until he nervously said, "Sorry, that shouldn't have popped up. Do you want me to close this?" I nodded once. He closed the app and left. I sat there alone. I replayed the scene in my mind, frame by frame, his mouth curling into that familiar, performative grin. Her silence, sharper than any word. I thought of scraped knees and spelling tests, of the night Tobin called me crying from his college dorm because his girlfriend had left him, and I stayed on the phone until he fell asleep. I remembered how I taught him to tie his shoes using a stuffed bear, and how he once said, "Mom, you're the smartest person I know." That little boy died in me today. "You think I'm disposable," I whispered to myself, "but I'm the one who taught you how to stand." An hour later, my tablet rang. A FaceTime call. It was Joran. He looked older, wider smile, missing one front tooth. He stared at the screen for a second and said, "Oh, I thought you were gone." My throat tightened. He didn't mean it cruelly, but he said it like he believed it, like someone told him I was already fading. Before I could speak, the camera shifted. I saw Milas in the background. Her hand reached out, and the screen went dark. Call ended. I sat still for a long time. Later, a nurse asked if I wanted to report anything. I shook my head. There was no point. Words mean little when the people speaking them never meant to keep you around. Instead, I opened my ledger. Wrote it all down. The video. The call. Joran's face. Malis's hand. Then, I flipped to a blank page and drew a square. "This," I wrote, "is the frame that broke me." That evening, I pushed the tablet under my bed and stared into the mirror. My hair was thinner, my cheeks softer than I remembered. But my eyes, they still looked like mine. "You watched me," I said quietly. "Now I'll watch you." The email came on a Thursday morning. Subject line: Joran's birthday celebration. No greeting, no warmth. Just a list of times, dress code, parking instructions. Sent from Malis's work address, as if I were a colleague, not Joran's grandmother. There was no call, not even a line saying they hoped I could make it. I read it twice, then closed the tablet. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend it hadn't arrived. But I knew I'd go. Not for Malis. Not even for Tobin. For Joran. He didn't choose this. Any of it. On Saturday, I stood at the edge of their backyard, clutching the gift bag like it might anchor me. The decorations were extravagant. Balloon arches, catering tables, rented lawn furniture with matching cushions. Guests buzzed in clusters, laughing in that clipped, polite way strangers do at kids' parties. No one greeted me. A few people nodded absently. One woman smiled, then turned to ask Malis something about the cake. Malis walked by once, holding a tray of drinks. She looked right past me. I found a seat near the catering table. Close enough to observe, far enough to be forgotten. They didn't assign seats, but every table had name cards. Mine wasn't there. The photographer made his rounds, cheerfully coaxing families into poses. "Let's get the grandparents in this one," he called at one point. But he looked right through me. Later, I heard him ask the woman beside me, Is she with staff? I almost laughed. Instead, I folded my hands and stared at the string lights dancing above the trees. I remembered when birthdays meant homemade cakes, handmade banners, and plastic dinosaurs on the lawn. I used to plan them down to the hour. One year, Tobin cried because the blue balloons weren't the exact shade he'd asked for. I stayed up past midnight, baking a second cake just to make him smile. Now, I didn't even get a sticker with my name on it. I wandered inside to use the restroom. On the way, I passed a wall-mounted TV. A slideshow was playing, photos from Tobin's company, a brand video, some scenes of office events, then family moments. 3 generations together appeared across the screen. There I was, for 2 seconds, hugging Joran from behind. No name, no voiceover, just a flash, then gone. The next clip was Milas, smiling wide, labeled Mother of the Year. I stood there, arms at my sides, unsure what stung more, the omission or the precision of it. The party music thumped behind me. Laughter echoed from the patio. I stepped back outside, scanned the gift table, and gently set down the book I'd brought. A hardcover edition of Harold and the Purple Crayon, wrapped in gold paper. I didn't write a card. They didn't want one from me. Without a word, I walked past the tables, past the photo booth, past the woman holding her phone sideways to capture the cupcake tower. No one stopped me. No one noticed. Back in my room, I opened my tablet and checked social media. Milas had already posted an album, Joran's Magical Day. Dozens of photos, group shots, blurred candids, Joran laughing, blowing out candles. I wasn't in a single one. I scrolled to the bottom, paused at a picture of Milas and Tobin flanking Joran, all 3 beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Grateful for our tribe." I closed the app. Then, very quietly, I whispered to the empty room. I showed up. They made sure I didn't stay. It started with laundry. I had offered to help fold towels in the communal room, something to break the monotony. I wasn't looking for praise. I just wanted to move, to feel useful again. The cart was already there, stacked with warm linens, and I began sorting by instinct. That's when the new nurse walked in, clipboard in hand, a Bluetooth earpiece wedged too tightly in one ear. She glanced my way and said to another resident, "Oh, housekeeping's early today, that's good." She didn't even pause. No one corrected her. I stood there, a towel still folded in my hands, realizing how easy it was for them to forget who I was. Back in my room, I didn't say a word to anyone. I closed the door softly, then turned to look at the nameplate. Misspelled again. Odella. 1 letter, but it was enough. The wrong name on the wrong door. Every time I saw it, it chipped something loose inside me. I used to have a name. A real one. Odella Marie Walters. It was stitched into the hem of every dress I wore to church. It was engraved in the brass nameplate outside my classroom when I used to teach 2nd grade. It was whispered by my husband when he called me from the kitchen. Now it was reduced to a clerical error. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, and let the silence press in. It felt heavier now, not comforting, just empty. Later that afternoon, the facility receptionist wheeled in a box labeled Personal Items, Walters. It had come from what used to be my home. Someone had packed what they thought mattered. Inside were 2 pairs of shoes, a few winter scarves, and a small zippered photo album. I hadn't seen that album in years. It was one of those plastic-covered kinds, the cheap kind you pick up at drugstores. I flipped it open. The first few pages were intact. Tobin's baby pictures, a shot of our first house, a Thanksgiving spread from a year when we all still fit around one table. But then came the gaps. Whole sections had been gutted. I turned another page. My face had been cut out, literally. In one picture, I could see a birthday cake I had made, with my signature frosting roses. But my figure beside it was gone. Only the edge of my blouse sleeve remained, a jagged line where scissors had passed. Photo after photo, it was the same. Not torn by accident. Removed. Erased. I closed the album slowly, my hands shaking in that controlled way they do when you're trying very hard not to scream. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate. They weren't just pushing me out of their present. They were rewriting the past to pretend I'd never mattered. I pressed the album to my chest and let the weight of that truth settle. Then I stood up, walked to my small closet, and opened a shoebox I hadn't touched since moving here. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was a single photo I'd kept separate. Me and Carl, my husband, holding Tobin when he was barely a week old. His head resting against my collarbone, Carl's hand steadying his back. All three of us in one frame, intact. I removed it gently, brushed the edge of the frame, and placed it on my bedside table. No caption, no hashtag, no cropping, just the truth. I sat down and picked up my pen. On the back of that photo, in small, steady handwriting, I wrote, "This is who I was. This is who I still am." The hallway was quiet except for the faint buzz of overhead lights and the slow shuffle of slippers down linoleum. I sat in the corner of the lounge with my notebook open, pretending to read. Just beside the nurse's station, two staff were talking low enough to make it sound accidental. "She's marked for premium tier billing. I don't know why. She doesn't get any of the extra care." My ears sharpened. "She's probably got long-term insurance. They just file it under her name." They moved on after that, but the damage had already burrowed in. I closed my notebook slowly and added 2 lines in the margin. "Billing discrepancies. Check coverage. Confirm with facility." Later that afternoon, as the shift changed and the late sun poured through the blinds in slanted ribbons, a nurse I didn't know well paused at my door. "This came for you," she said, sliding an envelope onto my table with the same casual tone someone might use for a restaurant receipt. The envelope was plain. No logo, no return address. Inside were 6 pages, copies of invoices, claim summaries, and insurance filings, all under my name, all marked delivered, completed, reimbursed. Services I had never heard of. Occupational therapy 3 times a week, bathing assistance I never received, private nurse consultation. I sat on the edge of my bed with the papers fanned around me, the fan humming behind me like some tired judge waiting for my verdict. Tobin had done this. I saw it clearly now. The day he stopped by months ago, documents already clipped and highlighted. "Just a little thing for the insurance people," he'd said, not meeting my eyes, shuffling like a teenager caught sneaking in after curfew. "Initial here and here. You don't even have to read it, Mom. It's standard." "Standard," he said. I initialed blindly. The knock came just after dinner. A staff member handed me a holiday box wrapped in glittery red paper. "Someone dropped this off earlier," she said. "Didn't say who." I opened it at my desk. Inside, a small tin of peppermint bark and a folded card that read, "Thanks for making it easy." The handwriting was familiar, too neat, too careful. Beneath it, in printed cursive, "The house is so much more peaceful now. Happy holidays, Malis." That was the moment the sting turned to fire. I didn't rip the letter. I didn't throw the tin. I simply placed the card inside my journal and pulled out the documents again. One by one, I tore each page in half, clean, deliberate tears, and then taped them back together with labeled sticky notes. Fraud, misuse, misrepresentation, evidence. I labeled the envelope Phase 1 and tucked it under my mattress. In the morning, I made a call I hadn't made in years. Anstis answered on the second ring. Her voice was exactly as I remembered, slightly hoarse, warm but firm. "Well, if it isn't the ghost of Christmas past," she joked. I didn't laugh. "I need to talk to you," I said. "It's time." She didn't ask why, didn't need to. By the time I hung up, my mind had already started stitching pieces together. I could feel the shape of it forming, the spine of something solid, something real, not revenge, something cleaner, stronger. Consequence. That night, I took the taped papers, the billing codes, the peppermint bark, and filed them in a manila folder. On the tab, I wrote in black ink, Phase 1. I stared at the words a long while. Then I whispered to the quiet room, "You taught me to endure. I'll teach you consequence." On the third morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. The light from the hallway cast a pale glow across my cheekbones, softening the lines that had deepened in this place. But something in my reflection had changed. Not the sag of skin or silver hair. I'd long made peace with those. It was in my eyes. They looked steadier, sharper. I no longer looked like a woman waiting for a visit that would never come. I looked like someone who'd made a decision. This place wasn't a sanctuary. It was a well-decorated waiting room for people whose families had quietly signed them off. Every hallway echo, every mismatched name tag, every untouched bingo board. It was all camouflage. And I'd worn it long enough. I reviewed the documents again that afternoon with the lawyer Anstis had recommended. We sat at a small table in the facility's unused craft room, a space that still smelled faintly of glue sticks and untouched watercolor kits. "That's new," I said, pointing at the page. He nodded. "It's a financial authorization, granting Tobin permission to open lines of credit in your name." "I never signed that." His eyes softened. "I believe you, but proving it." I waved him off. I'd heard those disclaimers too many times. I didn't need his assurance. I needed a plan. That night, I packed a single suitcase, just enough for a week, even though I wasn't sure where I was going. I left the room spotless, bed made, notebook gone, framed photo of Carl and baby Tobin tucked safely between sweaters. On the pillow, I placed a piece of paper. It said one word: enough. I walked out at 7:12 a.m., while breakfast trays clattered in the cafeteria. No one questioned me. I smiled at the receptionist, who returned it automatically, eyes fixed on her monitor. Anstis's car was already waiting outside. A dusty sedan with one missing hubcap, same as always. She opened the door without saying a word. The drive to her place in East Texas took 4 hours. The silence between us was comfortable, like old denim. When we arrived, she handed me a cup of coffee before I even sat down. The kitchen was warm, lived in. A handmade quilt covered the guest bed. There were bookshelves that didn't match. It was perfect. It was temporary. But it was mine. 2 days later, I mailed a package to Tobin's office. A small box with a simple contents list. One framed photo, me holding Tobin, 8 days old. One copy of the contract I never signed. One note that read, "You taught me to sign things blindly. Never again." I didn't need a return receipt. By the end of the week, I had closed 2 bank accounts and moved the remaining balance into a new credit union under my maiden name. Anstis helped me file the first report, Elder Financial Exploitation, preliminary claim. I called the insurance company, revoked every authorization. A nurse I trusted back at Highland Cedar quietly emailed me copies of the billing statements. The paper trail was mine now. Every click, every signature, every silence. They'd built a cage from fine print. I'd learned to read between the lines. On the 7th day, Tobin called the facility. I knew because a staff member I trusted, Charisse, texted me, "Your son's panicking. They don't know where you went." That night, my phone rang again. I stared at the screen. Tobin's name glowed in the dark. I didn't answer. I tucked the phone under the quilt and whispered to myself, "This time, he has to wait for me." The morning Tobin walked into his office, he didn't expect anything unusual. But there it was, an envelope waiting on his polished oak desk. His assistant said it had been hand-delivered and marked confidential. Inside, he found a legal notification, a formal investigation into elder financial exploitation. Attached was a printout, a screenshot from their family group chat. There, in plain sight, was the message Malis had sent. Guess she finally stopped whining. Highland's her forever home now, LOL. Underneath it, a string of laughing emojis from cousins who hadn't called me in years. It wasn't just a letter, it was the fuse. Anstis's journalist friend published the article that same afternoon. It was a short but cutting piece titled, "When the Sun Becomes the Stranger." It opened with excerpts from my journal, then transitioned into the facts. Documents showing unauthorized financial activity, a video of Tobin joking at the care facility's desk, Melis quietly smirking beside him. Then came the photo. Me holding Tobin at 8 days old. The caption read, "She raised him, he erased her." The article spread like wildfire. Within hours, the story hit local stations. Online, strangers were tagging Tobin's business with comments. "Is this who you really are? You steal from your own mother?" "Some son." Clients pulled out. One issued a statement condemning elder abuse. A real estate deal fell through. Tobin's social media went silent, his business pages locked down. He asked for a private mediation. Melis came too, of course. She wore a sleek navy blazer, the kind meant to look serious but not desperate. Tobin looked tired, like someone trying to outrun a storm that already soaked through his shoes. They spoke first. "Things got misinterpreted," Tobin said. Melis added, "We were under a lot of pressure, running a business, raising a child. I'm sure you understand." I said nothing. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Tobin continued. "It was never malicious." I reached into my bag and pulled out the framed photo, the same one I'd sent him weeks ago. I placed it gently on the table, facing them. "You were 8 days old here," I said. "Your father took the picture. I hadn't slept in 3 nights, but I remember thinking, whatever happens next, I'll protect this boy." Neither of them spoke. "I survived before you," I said, standing, "and I'll survive after you." I left the photo behind and walked out. By the end of the week, I'd signed the final documents, revoked all financial powers, removed them from my will, transferred what was left to a foundation Anstis connected me with, one that provides legal aid to elder abuse victims. The story stayed online, gaining traction. A camera crew caught Tobin leaving his office, his face half hidden behind sunglasses. Reporters called out, "Tobin, care to comment on the investigation?" He ignored them, but the video circulated anyway. That night, from Anstis's porch, I watched the clip play on her tablet. "He wanted the world to see him as a son," I said, sipping tea slowly. "Now they do." The porch light flickered as the sun dipped behind the tree line, casting long shadows across the wood planks beneath my feet. I sat with my coffee cradled between both hands, its warmth seeping into my skin. This porch, with its chipped railing and creaky swing, felt more like home than any room I'd lived in since Carl died. Birds settled into the branches, rustling the air in that soft, content way that always made me pause. For the first time in what felt like years, the silence didn't scare me. It welcomed me. The breeze was mine. The morning no longer belonged to someone else's agenda. I pulled out a letter from my cardigan pocket. Anstis had written it weeks ago, but I hadn't been ready to read it until now. "Dear Odella," it began, "before Carl, before Tobin, before loss, you were a woman who danced barefoot on the quad in winter. You laughed too loud in the library and once challenged a professor to a debate on Emily Dickinson. You were fire, girl. Don't let the years make you forget it." I smiled. I could almost smell the crisp grass of that college lawn, see my younger self with wild hair, boots scuffed from wandering too far between classes. That girl hadn't worried about bank statements or who sat next to whom at Thanksgiving. She was bold. She was mine. My phone buzzed. A text. "Melis. We're moving. Just thought you should know." No apology, no explanation. Just a line typed from a woman who'd always chosen precision over kindness. I didn't reply. A few hours later, 3 voicemails appeared in sequence. Tobin. First message. "I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything I've built. This isn't how family treats each other." Second. "Mom, maybe we can talk. Settle things quietly. No lawyers. You don't have to do this." Third. Silence. 10 seconds of breathing. Then the line cut off. I didn't need to listen a 4th time. I deleted all 3. Before I did, I wrote in my journal, "He still doesn't say I'm sorry." The next morning, I walked into the local library, papers in hand. The woman behind the counter was young, maybe late 20s, her nails painted bright yellow. She asked for my name, and I hesitated, just for a second. "Odella Walters," I said. She smiled. "Welcome back, Miss Walters." The new card felt light in my wallet, but something about it grounded me. For so long, I'd been Mom, Grandma, Mrs. Carter, or just her, in a room full of charts. That morning, I walked out feeling like myself again. Later that evening, I sat at Anstis's kitchen table with a blank piece of paper and a steady hand. No legal filing, no strategy, just a note to myself. I'm not healed, but I'm not hiding. That's enough for now. Maybe you've lived through something like this. Maybe you've been the one pushed aside, made to feel small in rooms you once built with your own hands. I know what it's like to carry a name that others try to erase, and how powerful it feels to reclaim it. If this story reminded you of your own strength, I hope you remember, survival isn't the end. Rebuilding is. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not invisible. What would you have done if you were in my place? Have you ever had to draw a line and say, enough? Share your story. Tell me what resonated. If this video moved you, comment with a 1, or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I truly want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories that speak to the heart. Your voice matters here. Let's keep this conversation going.